Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at a Celestron SLT130, a 5-inch f5 computerized telescope at a very popular price point and a very popular telescope and one that I get asked about all the time. How does it perform? Well, let's take a look. Okay, so the 130 SLT is a reflector telescope, meaning there's 130 millimeters, about 5 inches worth of mirror back here. It's plenty of light, directs the light into a diagonal here, and there's an eyepiece here. This is where you focus, and to change magnifications, you change eyepieces. What's attractive about this particular model is it has a computer on it, and it will go to many objects in the sky at the touch of a button. And this is very appealing to a lot of people. So let's take a look at this. And the reason I have all this stuff here, by the way, Celestron is a large company. And a large company has stuff all the way from department store grade that you should not be buying, all the way up to professional grade equipment that you find in observatories all over the world. Now, from left to right here, on your perspective, we have at the bottom the Power Seeker series. This is the Power Seeker 127. I don't recommend any of those, and that model in particular, I have an entire video devoted to why you should not buy one of those. A step up from those are the Astromasters, and this is the Astromaster 130. I have a video up on this one as well. I don't recommend those either. There's going to be so much frustration here with the mechanical aspects of it. I think the beginner is going to be frustrated by this, but it's a little better than the Power Seeker. I'd still advise you to stay away from that, but you'll find a little bit of dissenting opinion here. Have the SLT here, and as we keep going, we have the NexStar SE model. We have a C5 on here, similar design. You're starting to see these all have computerized hand controllers on them, and we have an AVX, and that is a C6 on there. So as we go from here to here, you'll notice, if you know me very well, I don't recommend the Power Seekers and the Astromasters, but I do recommend the NexStar SE series and the ones on the AVX. There are others here also. There's the CPCs and there's the models on the CGXs. I don't have those here. This big meat is here. I didn't feel like moving that thing around. This guy weighs something like 150 pounds. So you'll notice the SLT series sits right in the middle between the products I don't recommend and the products I do recommend. So where is it? Well, if you know me well, you'll know I cautiously recommend these things. They are a little bit cheap and frustrating for beginners, but they can be made to work if you are determined enough. I think some of my negative reaction to the SLT series comes from the fact that most of these I've seen are the SLT 127s. That's the Maxitov. For some reason, people tend to gravitate towards that model, and they don't realize that at 1500 millimeters of focal length per any given eyepiece, the magnification is going to be higher, and the resultant field of view is going to be smaller, making everything look a little bit worse, and the electronics appear to be a lot less accurate. This one only has a focal length of 650 millimeters with a 20 millimeter eyepiece installed. It's only about 32 power or so. That's good. Low power is good for beginners. There is a red dot reflex sight here. If you turn this on, it projects a red dot at infinity. So if you know your star charts, you can just sort of point where it is, and as long as everything is aligned, what you pointed it at should be in the eyepiece. So these things sell for somewhere around $650, but you'll see them discounted in the low fives, and I think right around that $500 price point is a popular one for beginners. You're serious enough to want to get involved with something. It's above the junk category, but you don't want to spend the big dollars on this stuff that's over here, and that's fine. All right, so let's talk about the computer. Now, you've seen me say this before, but these hand controllers here, they're supposed to be for beginners and wanting to get started to know the night sky, but very ironically, these things very often are better for advanced observers. For example, when you power the thing on, it runs you through a bewildering array of alignment options. Half of these I will never use. The beginner is going to be frustrated and stymied by all of this, and I've seen this happen very many times. This particular one came out of a storeroom in a planetarium, and when I powered it on, I'm pretty sure, just based on what I'm seeing on the keypad, it was never used, it was never initialized, and I see this a lot out there. People just never get past that first initial alignment process. People buy the computerized telescopes because they'll say, oh, I want it to point at things in the sky by itself. But the irony is that in order for it to tell you what's in the night sky, you have to tell it what's in the night sky. So you do actually have to learn things. So in other words, you have two options. You can either put energy into learning the night sky, or you can spend time learning how to use an operating system. And to use the operating system, you have to learn a little bit about the night sky itself. So it's kind of a wash either way. All right, so the first alignment that comes up is something called sky align. Now, in the past, you used to have to know the names of two objects in the sky. You point them out, and then the telescope builds a model, and it knows where it is, and it can find everything else for you. Some people don't like having to learn all those stars in the night sky, so there's this thing called sky align, and what it does is you can point it at any three objects in the sky. They can be planets, they can be the moon, they can be stars, any three objects in the sky. It will then back calculate and then build a model of the night sky, and then it'll be able to tell you where it is. I had mixed success with this. I'll put up a chart here. About half of the time when I did this, it showed me align failed. About half the time, it was align success. That's about normal for what I see for these things. And in fact, I wound up doing the conventional two-star line, but to do that, you need to know two bright objects in the night sky. Okay, so I've gone ahead and done a dummy align indoors. It thinks it's pointed at Saturn. Don't tell it. But I'm going to try to make it go to M13. That's the big globular cluster in Hercules. So I've dialed up M13 on the deep sky list here. And when you hit enter, it will go to it by itself. Now, one thing I want you to notice here is that there is a holster that holds this hand controller, and it's fixed on the leg, but the entire base turns, and you do have to watch out for cable management issues because it can strangle itself, it can pull on the cord, and things can happen that way. As a result, what I like to try to do is to do what the NexStar SE series does, which is the next series up. I put some Velcro on the back here, and then I just stick it to the side here. This is much better. It's not going to strangle itself or pull the cord out. Okay, so while I did have modest success with the sky line, I decided not to use that. I went with a conventional two-star line, and it was fine. It's late fall now while I'm filming this, and I was able to look at M31, the Andromeda Galaxy, NGC 457, the dumbbell M27, M15, M13, M5, and other objects. You'll notice those things that I described are on opposite sides of the meridian. That can confuse go-to systems and make them less accurate. It was fine. I'm glad to be able to report that. I hate telling you when go-to systems aren't very accurate. Now, I learned from a long time ago from somebody who told me, if you want to really test a go-to system, especially a low-priced one, make it go to Saturn or the moon. You'd be surprised how many go-to systems, even the expensive ones, have trouble doing that. I've been up here several nights at this location with this, and several people have stopped by. These are complete beginners, and I was able to get sort of a reality check. What does someone who has never looked through a telescope before think about all of this? Well, do we have signs that there may be some cost-cutting measures here? Yes, we do, and those of you who know telescopes very well know what I'm about to say. It is the mount. The mount is just a little bit shaky and unsteady for an optical tube of this size. And those people who did come over did say to me, yeah, why is the thing jiggling and moving all the time? Every single person said it. Also, while there is a Vixen-compatible plate here, there are no mounting rings, so you can't rotate the tube. That may not be an immediate thing that you might notice, but over time, you're going to see that it'd be nice to rotate the rings once in a while. The focuser is a little bit strange. If you've seen me review some of these cheap focusers before, most of them are too loose. This one's the opposite. It's too tight. And I loosened everything that I could, all of the screws, and it's still too tight. Something is just, really binding in there. You wouldn't think that would be a problem, but when you're combining that with the unsteadiness in the mount, just the act of you focusing is enough to shake the tube enough so that it may be difficult for you to draw a fine focus. I stayed with the low power eyepiece. That's fine. There's a 9mm eyepiece that came with this thing. I didn't even bring it out there with me. I just knew it was going to be too much. Now, the shaft of the focuser is made of metal, but the focusing knobs themselves are made of plastic, and they just appear to be press fit on there. When you couple that with the tight focuser, I am concerned those are going to come loose over time. I showed the moon and Saturn and other objects to these people who came over, and they seemed pleased with this. One complaint they had consistently was the shakiness in the mount. Now, there is no hard and fast rule that the optical tube and the mount have to stay together, people who have been doing this for a while wind up swapping mounts in optical tubes all the time, if for no other reason that it is interesting and fun to try. So the mount, if you think about it, does not care what optical tube is on here. So I've got another kind of mount here. This is an Orion Versago, and I like these a lot. Sadly, they don't make these things anymore. I like the Versago and I like the Astrotech Voyager, but these things here are quite good, and it's actually quite sturdy. If you can look just from where you are, the legs are thicker, the castings are just bigger and thicker, and this thing holds the optical tube very well. You can also do the opposite. Again, the mount does not know or care what kind of optical tube is on here, so you can put a small refractor like this one. This is my Astrotech AT72, and you can do it this way. And I actually had a lot more fun with a small refractor on here than I did with this big optical tube because it's shorter and it's lighter. I also tried my Orion Short Tube 80 on it. Now, for imaging, I did try using this. This is my ASI 120mm. This is the -S variant on the optical tube here. And I did get this composite image of the moon. That's not too bad. I did run into one problem here. You'll recall inside I did Velcro the hand controller to the fork arm here to prevent the cable from twisting and pulling out. Well, a couple of times in the dark, by accident, I did put the hand controller in the holster, the mount spun around, and the cable sort of pulled itself out a little bit and the thing shut itself off. And now at random times, it will shut itself off for no apparent reason. You'll see in here that the sheathing has pulled off of the pins. Yep, I screwed up. Luckily, I knew someone in the club who's good at this. He fixed the connector, and now it's good as new. Okay, so what are we to make of this? You know, this has happened to me a few times in the past 25 years or so. I am neutral on this thing. You know, there are reasons to buy it, and there are reasons not to buy it. But I don't think any of those reasons are super strong. Everything's kind of bunched in the middle there. So if you did want to buy one of these things, the reason to get it is there isn't any one thing that it's doing wrong. And I think probably the mount is the biggest of the problems. You know, little issues with the operating system, the learning curve, the focuser is a little bit stiff. And I've seen some sample-to-sample variation on this model in the past. But you know, it's not a huge thing that you can't get over. I think if someone were a beginner and wanted to try to use this thing, it could teach you a lot about the night sky, and if you wanted to grow with it, it can grow with you. You can take the optical tube off and swap mounts and optical tubes like I showed you before. It could be a learning companion for you as you start your journey on this hobby. On the other hand, and I'm speaking from personal experience, that usually doesn't happen. What I usually find happens when someone buys one of these things is they get frustrated because when they start using it, they're all excited in the beginning, but when they start playing with it, they discover it's a lot more complicated than they first envisioned. And after a couple of tries, if they can't get it to work, it sits in the closet forever. It's sad, but that's what I see happening. In a minority of cases, you'll have somebody really patient and determined to make this thing work, and they do. When that happens, after a while, they discover that this probably wasn't the best thing to start off with, and they always wind up buying something else. You rarely, if ever, see somebody using one of these models long term. I'll tell you, if I was starting out in this hobby and I had $500 to spend, I'd probably get a 6-inch Dobsonian reflector. Yes, you lose the computer, but you get everything else, and the everything else that you buy works very well and is very well made. So there you have it, a review of the Celestron SLT130, a very popular beginner's telescope at the $500 price point. I hope this has helped you to decide if you want to buy one of these for yourself. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.